Hello, everybody. Hello. How are we doing this evening? Good evening. We are the Novel Neighbor, and we are so excited to be hosting this virtual event for the incredible new queer romance, Chef's Choice. If you don't know us yet, the Novel Neighbor is a women-owned and operated bookstore in St. Louis, Missouri, which carries new books of all genres, as well as bookish gifts and goodies. We are also all huge romance readers at the Novel Neighbor, and tonight's book was one that we read months ago, we loved, and we knew that we wanted to support it in any way that we could. So we're so excited for this event. Before we get to tonight's conversation, I want to introduce our amazing conversation partner for the evening, Cat Sebastian. Cat Sebastian lives in a swampy part of the South with her husband, 3 kids, and 2 dogs. Before her kids were born, she practiced law and taught high school and college writing. When she isn't reading or writing, she's doing crossword puzzles, bird watching, and wondering where she put her coffee cup. And as a side note, Kat's newest book, We Could Be So Good, is truly amazing, and it will be on shelves in just a few days. So once you've read Chef's Choice, keep your eye out for this one next. And finally, our guest of honor this evening is TJ Alexander. TJ Alexander, the critically acclaimed author of Chef's Kiss and Chef's Choice, writes about queer love. Originally from Florida, they received their MA in writing and publishing from Emerson College in Boston. They live in New York City with their wife and various houseplants. And with that, I will bring on Kat and I will bring on TJ, and I will pass this over to them. Kat and TJ, thank you so much for joining us.
Hi. Hi. Thanks for having us.
Bye.
It's just us now.
It is. Do you want to start with the dreaded elevator pitch for the book?
You know, I actually really like elevator pitches. I used to work in marketing for like a hot second, so it doesn't like scare me. I can do one. Here we go.
Okay. Now it's going to have to be good. I mean,
well, no, it's not going to be good. But I'll do it. So Chef's Choice is the second in a series, and it follows the adventures of Luna, who is a trans woman living in New York. She loses her job unexpectedly, and she finds herself almost immediately caught up in a fake dating arrangement with a young trans man who needs a fake girlfriend for convoluted inheritance reasons. And they have to learn how to cook super complicated food, even though neither of them are cooks at all. So that's the book. That's the shenanigans that they get up to.
I loved that, like, it's for inheritance reasons, which is like the best reason, like, to have a fake relationship of any kind. Like, whenever it's for anything else, I'm like, no, like, absolutely not. I want there has to be like $1 billion in a will. And there you go.
Like, there has to be so much money riding on it because, like, I don't know. I loved the idea of making Jean-Pierre, the love interest, just like filthy rich, just like so much money, just throwing money around everywhere. Very attractive quality, I think.
It is. And also because when you meet him, all his other qualities, other than like aesthetic qualities, are
like
unattractive. Like, he sails onto the page like vaping indoors and like being rude to women and like flinging money, like offering money, like small amounts of money to strangers to like talk to his like weird grandfather on the phone. Like he could not be worse. But then he offers Luna $600,000 and you're like, okay, you're good. You can stay.
Yeah. Luna, I think, like a lot of people, would do a lot of things for $600,000.
Right. What if she even said something like, I've done worse for less, and you're like, yeah, you know what?
Same.
We all have.
Yeah, but inheritance plots for fake dating, they truly are top tier. I just love them. I just think they're also very, like, we're all suspending our disbelief. It's all a little bit silly. When I first pitched this idea, my editor was like, I don't even need a reason. She's like, we don't even need to like get into the nitty gritty of like, oh, there's a will and like, just fine. I buy it. I was like, good.
Because it's the plot. That's like that's the MacGuffin, right? Like, it's like the reason they're going to, like, if you pick up a book and it's fake dating, you know that there's some like inane reason for them to, it's not going to be it's not going to be like a reason that you're going to have in your life. That's not a normal person thing to do, like,
Yeah.
is to fake date somebody for months, you
It
know?
can be as unrealistic and bonkers as you
Mhm.
want, but like because it's fake dating, if you're someone who's into that trope, then you're just like, my ass is in the seat, like it's already happening.
Yes, like, I'm not, like, I always say like this, I am not into this. Like I've been complaining for like 3 years about fake dating, and then I keep reading them. Like, not like my complaints are not stopping me from picking up the books, and I keep liking them. And I think that it's like I like the I really like the forced proximity is one thing. You know what I mean? Like I know that if it's a fake dating book, this is not going to be a book that like jerks me around for 50%, and then they start to have conversations like, oh no, like they are going to be talking from like page 10.
Yeah.
And you know, and so it always delivers on that, you know.
There's also the whole aspect in fake dating of like, to make it believable, we super quick have to get to know each other, like super quick, just jump over all the like first date awkwardness of a real relationship and get right into like, you know, who are you? What are you into? Who's your family? Like, just give me the like highlights, which I think is very funny to watch happen to characters.
Yeah, and like watch it, and because that's like a stressful process, and you know what I mean, like it's stressful in real life, and then like when you expedite it so that it's happening over the span of like one chapter, that's going to be like you're going to get to like you're going to see them like react, and that's always super satisfying.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask, okay, so like since fake dating is super prevalent, like I would have thought that I would have seen before this book somebody compare it to sex work. Okay. And I think this is the first time, like obviously like I don't have like a comprehensive catalog of fake dating books in my mind, but I do think this is the first time I've seen it when it's not actually like an escort being hired to do this. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think that happened organically. Like, what, you know, if you haven't read the book yet, there is a brief argument, discussion. There's a conversation that happens between the two main characters early on in their fake dating arrangement where Luna does compare it to sex work because, you know, in her view, she is being paid to provide a service that involves being intimate with somebody on some level. And, you know, even if it isn't like literally, you know, having sex with somebody, she feels that it's like the same idea of like, you know, and that not all sex work is about literally having sex with somebody. And Jean-Pierre does not like hearing that. he is a little bit freaked out by that implication. And so the conversation they have about that, I felt it was important to include that because one, I think it, you know, it says a lot about Luna and where she's coming from. And two, like, you know, every queer person that I knew who moved to New York and had like not a trust fund to rely on did some kind of, you know, if not like, oh, you know, being an escort or something, it was something like, you know, oh, I'm gonna like sell my socks to foot fetishists online or something for some extra pocket money or whatever. And that's just like a reality of a lot of trans people, queer people in, you know, a living situation where everything's really expensive. And it's also an experience that a lot of trans women had that I wanted to be like, you know, this is something that should at least be, I don't know, touched on a little bit, I think, because it is like, you know, in my mind too, I agree with Luna. I think she's very right and smart to say that it's still sex work to be paid for that form of intimacy.
Also, like I'm researching a 70s thing, okay? And like going to the big city as a queer person and then hustling is like I don't want to say a time-honored tradition, but it's pretty much like it's, I don't want to say it's built into queer culture either, but it's been going on for a really, really long time, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
And I liked the nod to that. But also like before Jean-Pierre comes around to the idea of it being sex work, he's already treating it as work. You know,
Yeah.
like this is work that needs to be compensated. He's like, I don't know what the going rate is for a well, he says a fake lover. Okay.
He's French, so he can get away with saying a lot of things that if a normal love interest in an American romance novel said it, I'd be like, ooh, no, thank you.
Exactly. But like he wants to pay Luna what she's worth, okay? Which is in the context of like Luna's having a hard time being paid what she's worth like in her day job, okay? And so like to encounter that as a trait in somebody is automatically attractive, right? Like that they aren't trying to nickel and dime you over this. Like instead $600,000, like okay, like I think that's a perfectly fair rate for a billionaire to pay.
The worst thing a rich person can be is cheap, and so many of them are, that I was like, okay, he's gonna be rich, which is, you know, well, what are you gonna do? But he's gonna be, you know, he's going to understand that like he deserves to pay what someone's, you know, worth is. So I think that, you know, one thing about fake dating where somebody is, you know, clearly more wealthy than the other, there's that built-in power imbalance. I think he feels, you know, very aware of it at the very start, and very like, I don't know, he has a little bit of worry of using that position, you know, for ill, and he doesn't want to be seen as like, you know, this evil rich dude coming in and just like, you know, taking advantage of people. And I think, you know, we find out later as we meet some of his family why he might have learned that lesson.
Yeah, and like it's very clear that he doesn't know any normal people. Okay,
No.
like at all. Like he doesn't know what it like. He went to like a fancy boarding school, and definitely doesn't know how like regular people pay their bills or like what they live like or anything like that. But he also knows that he doesn't know, and so he's not like he, and so he solves that problem by throwing money at everything, which is what you should do when you are in fact the rich person in the room, you know. Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. So did you know, okay, like did you, like a craft question, like are you an outliner?
I wasn't before this book.
Okay.
My first book that I wrote, Chef's Kiss, which came out last year, I was just kind of like tooling around and just like for fun ended up writing a book, which is how like writing always used to be for me.
Mm-hmm.
And then for this book, it was like, well, this is something I have to like sell. I have to pitch it. I have to convince my editor that this is going to be the second book for my deal. And I was like, I didn't know how to do that. And my agent explained it to me. And I said, oh, an outline. Okay, yeah, totally. I can write that. And so then I like immediately got off the phone and Googled like how to write an outline. Because like, when was the last time I had to outline something that I wasn't like in college? But I found it really helpful. And it's definitely something that I'm probably going to end up doing more and more, like not just for the projects that require it, but for things that might not require it. I found it really helpful to like keep going back to it and being like, wait, who feels what at this point? Like, where are we right now? I enjoyed doing that, and it seemed to work for me. So I'll keep doing it.
So the reason I asked is because like we meet Luna in the first book, right? In Chef's Kiss. And you can't help but love Luna. Okay. Like every time that she appears on page, she steals the scene. She's perfect. Okay.
Main character energy. Just
yeah. Like, and you know that she's getting, like, you know what I mean? Like without it being like sequel baity, you know that like if there's another book, she's going to be in it. Right. And then in this book, when you meet Jean-Pierre and he like arrives on page with like you know, like the worst person you've ever met, only handsome and rich, you know, like my first thought was, oh my God, TJ is going to saddle my poor, perfect Luna, who never did anything wrong in her life, like with this goblin. But 2 pages later, I'm like, I would die for both of them. So like, if anything happens to Jean-Pierre, I will kill everyone in this room and then myself. So like, so you knew going in that you were writing a goblin, okay? And you like,
I mean, I knew by the end of the outline process that I was going to be writing a goblin. But when I had to like sit down to be like, okay, I need to tell them what this book is about so that they'll let me write this book. What happens? Who does she fall in love with? I didn't know until I started, putting that together. I went through like every side character in the first book in Chef's Kiss and was like, do I pair her with this woman? Do I pair her with this guy? Like, what about this? What about that? And I was just trying to like, in my head, envision like, who's the perfect person that I can give her? And Jean-Pierre doesn't appear at all in the first book. He's mentioned, not even by name, super briefly as like an offhand comment, because he's the grandson of a character that we meet in the first book. And all we know about him is that he's, we assume French because his grandmother is also French. And, that she says that he's a trans man. And I was just kind of sitting there with like this big, question mark grandson and like, maybe the trans grandson. And it just like that started falling into place for me. Cause then it was like, okay, well, what is the grandson of this really rich French woman look like? And I'm like, well, he's rich, which is like, I mean, that's a fantasy for a lot of people, is like to be rich, but like for trans people, that is like, so many doors start opening, so many like miracles start occurring once money isn't an issue. So I was like, well, that would be fun. Why don't we do that? And like, he's rich, so obviously he's going to be a little bit of an asshole. And then like, that's really fun to write. So it kind of just snowballed from there. I was like, what habits can I give him that I find personally abhorrent, but are kind of charming once you get to know somebody? And I'm like, vaping, being too into coffee, being a snob about everything, like all those things that like, I know that I'm like that on, in certain levels, addicted to certain things or too into certain things. But that hopefully once you get to know somebody with those attributes, like you can forgive so much once you see that like, they're a vulnerable person who, at least in Jean-Pierre's case, almost immediately becomes this pathetic doormat for Luna. It's just like pathetic right off the bat for her. Yep. And we love a pathetic man. We just do.
Yeah. Like I think it is before that like FaceTime with his grandfather ends on page like 10 or whatever of the book. I think he is all in for Luna at that point, and nobody can blame him because she is, as I said, perfect. And that's any reasonable person's reaction. But we only see him through Luna's eyes. Okay. Like, and so taking a character who is like that much of a, like, I don't want to say a mess. Okay.
Disaster.
I mean, like he is a disaster, and he's also, and like in a potentially personally offensive way, like, and to take him and we don't ever hear his thoughts, and Luna doesn't realize that he's that into her. Okay. And yet we know, and we also know that she gets that he's like more fragile than he's letting on, right? That's a tightrope act, like that's hard to pull off, and you did it. Like
well, thank you. There were points where I was like, I don't want Luna to look like she's stupid. She's not. It's not that she doesn't realize that JP is that into her because she's just like, missing all these obvious cues and stuff. It's because she doesn't know she's in a romance novel. Like that's the only reason. She thinks she's in like a survival mode of like, I gotta get my money, I gotta make this work, I gotta do this and I gotta do that. She's in an adventure book.
I was thinking like she's on LinkedIn. Do you know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? Like she's like she's planning her career. She's helping other, you know what I mean? Like she's got her spreadsheets. Like, she is, I don't think it would occur to her that like this was a romance plot that she was. And also like that's a big assumption if you're not a character in a romance novel, to assume that your business partner, right, is in love with you is sort of like a weird thing to do, right?
Right.
So
and also in her defense, JP is very bad at expressing himself.
no, he manages not to express himself at all in English at any point in this book.
No, it's not his first language. It's his like 15th language.
What can you expect?
Yeah. That was a decision that I definitely made, was to make a main character who's French and whose first language is a language that I speak maybe 5 sentences of. Like, I was on that Duolingo owl trying to learn French like every day while I was writing this book. And it just got to the point where I was like, I'm never going to get to the level where I personally will be able to speak French through Jean-Pierre. So I was very, very fortunate to have a really, really great French speaking person help me out with that kind of stuff.
I was going to ask how you managed to pull that off, because yes, his French is perfect, you know?
I mean, I hope, I assume.
Yeah.
I gave it my best shot, and then I was like, Del, can you? And, very, very kindly was like, oh, your French isn't bad. It's just not, I wouldn't put it this way. Like the most kind French reading, sensitivity reading that I've ever received. So yeah, I was very, very thankful for that. And also I think that like, if I did make any mistakes in the French, cultural stuff, that's on me. But I also feel that like the French can take it.
The French can take it. The French are not a marginalized group at this.
They're not. They're fine. France is okay. They're doing fine.
And also, think of how happy you would make a lot of people who would be able to look at this American, like who got all of these details wrong.
Oh, if Jean-Pierre could find like an error in my own book about him, he would be ecstatic. It just months of just joy for him out of that one thing. He's my best friend.
I don't usually have like that strong a reaction to characters, especially characters you don't get their point of view, but like he is just like, I'm telling you, like I think it's also that he's like very clearly depressed, and like we can see the ways that he needs to grow as a person, right? Mm-hmm. So, that, depression is always like an endearing quality, right?
Yeah, because we're all going through something.
Like, right?
We're all going through it.
Right.
And, it gives him a vulnerability and a kind of like, oh, he's not, impervious to, mm-hmm. as he likes to lead people to believe, perhaps. And yeah, I think Luna finds that very endearing. But not in a way where she feels like, oh, it's her job to like fix him. She's not there to fix him or make him worse. He's doing all that on his own. Yes. But yeah, he undergoes a real arc of some real growth. We love to see it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. No, it's great. I wanted to ask you about the food. Like, there is a lot of food in your first book, but I didn't count the food. Okay. But like, I think this book has even more food. Did you try the recipes? And also, have you ever had a meal like the bullshit fancy meal, the menu?
So yes, there is a lot of food in this book. I did make the macaroni and cheese that Jean-Pierre at one point makes as a gesture. It's very romantic. And that is, if you got the little character card with your pre-order, it's got a recipe for it on the back, and you can make it. It's a real food that you can eat. So that is real. All the other like hot cuisine, like tasting menu style food is completely fictional. I do not think you could actually make it in the real world. A lot of the food was just like jokes about fancy Michelin starred tasting menus. There was at one point in my life, I did have like a brief few years there where like money was good and I had sold my soul, and I was having like once in a while a very fancy treat at a very fancy restaurant, but those days are gone now. And while I do miss it, I do think that like this was a really nice way to kind of poke fun at the whole fine dining experience, because like the food that they're making isn't just super fancy and expensive. It's like very old fashioned. It's like a menu that has been in his family for generations or whatever, and it's something that food, like everything else, has eras, and it has like aesthetics that come and go, trends that come and go, and this menu is as elevated as it is still like really kind of silly in an old-fashioned way. And I would not recommend anyone trying to make any of that food. I don't think it's possible. I don't think you can whip a ramp. It's better to leave.
That one made me laugh out loud.
Like, because I did, when I had to come up with that part of the book, the menu that they're gonna make, I was like looking up a lot of old tasting menus of certain restaurants in certain cities, and trying to think like, okay, if this is like a French continental thing, what kinds of proteins would they have and what kinds of produce would they want to be highlighting. And there was always like a foam or a whipped something or other on the side of one of these courses. And it's so silly. Like, I'm sure it tastes good in real life, but I just wanted to kind of like have a few little fun little jokes about stuff like that.
I liked the juxtaposition of like food as like stress, right? Because it's stressful because they have to make the menu, and also it's stressful because it's like the weight of family expectations and all of that. And then there's comfort, because all the other food that we see in the book is comfort food. It's the macaroni and cheese, it's the croque monsieur, it's Luna's cheese plate, it's all right, or charcuterie, excuse me, but like it, and it's so like and we don't ever see them eat the fancy food, okay? Like, you know what I mean? So the food we actually see them eat is the comfort food.
Yeah, we see them tasting the fancy food. We see them working on it, because that food is work for them, and for almost everybody who has an experience like touching that kind of level of cuisine, that is a job. That is not fun. And yeah, I grew up working in restaurants. I think that it's some of the hardest work anyone will ever do in their lives. If anyone works in food service, like, thank you for your service. It's very, very difficult work. And it's not fun at all. I wanted to make sure that people like kind of got a small glimpse into, what that's like to work on your feet for, upwards of 12 hours every day. It's terrible.
Like the way that I think it's Ray describes it, okay, is it makes it sound like working in the fancy food factory, right? Like you're doing like a double shift at like the rich people fancy food factory, okay?
Yeah.
Like grueling physical labor, which is not, I mean, like I'm pretty far removed from like the fancy food restaurant culture, right? And I hadn't ever thought of it like that, Yeah. But yeah.
Ray and Simone do make a small cameo in this book. If you read book 1 and you like them, here they are back again. And they are very much in a like, okay, we're your coaches and we're gonna like teach you how to do a food. And yeah, Ray kind of scares Luna and JP a little bit by telling them like, yeah, this is how grueling it's going to be. This is how like physically demanding it's going to be. Because it is like, even in like, I never worked at like a really, really high class restaurant, but any restaurant, any busy restaurant that's doing, a certain number of tickets every night is going to have, all their prep, as much of it done as possible before people walk in the door. So the food that you get delivered, that you end up eating, like there are components on that plate that are going to have been made like hours or days in advance, because they have to be, because there's no physical way to get the amount and breadth of food that we've come to expect in just like even a casual dining experience, in a way that you would like cook it fresh and homemade at home. It's not possible. So yeah, it's sorry to get all, if anyone's really interested in my thoughts on the food.
No, it is really interesting. And it also ties into like the theme of like being valued for the work that you do, right? Because like the people who work under those conditions are not being paid according to what they're contributing, right?
Yeah.
And like that's like, it's an underlying motif in your work, okay?
Thank you. I would have never thought of it that way, but I guess you're right. It's not just the juxtaposition of like there's home cooking that like, a person with no formal training can do. And it's like, oh, it's from the heart and it's all filled with love, which is true. But it's also like the sweat and the tears and the exploitation that goes into making like high quality restaurant food. There's a lot happening there. It's really complicated. You can't just parse it out really simply, I don't think, like most things.
I have another craft question, and I'm going to try to phrase it in a way that's as spoiler light as I can. Okay. This book doesn't have like a heavy third act, like bleak moment / break. I don't think it's a spoiler to say that there's no breakup. Okay. Like the romance plot of the book is very gently paced. You know what I mean? Like there's no big miscommunication. There's no big fight that splits them up. You front load a lot of the conflict, so that way it's like they're getting a lot of like the things that could be deal breakers out of the way early on in the book, so that way it's not there to haunt them later on, right?
Yeah.
Did you mean to do that going in? Like, did you know you were going to write a low angst book? Because like when I set out to write a low angst book, I often have to write like the wrong book first, and I'm like I have more than once written the third act breakup, and then I look at it and I'm like, who do I think I am? And then I go, you know what I mean? And then I go and I pull it out and I write the right thing that should be in there. But it's like I have to like make the thing as I think it traditionally exists in order to shape it into what I want it to be. It's a big waste of time. And so I wanted to know if you knew you were going to do this like an alternative story structure.
I mean, I always like playing with tropes or with established things. I try to put a little twist on most of the things that I do, like, like even the fake dating arrangement. Like I feel like there's a little bit of a twist to it that, maybe you haven't seen in other fake dating books. But as far as like the structure went, like I wrote out, my outline, and I could see that there are arguments, there are discussions and arguments and secrets, but they're not the huge, giant blow up atomic bomb Act 3 breakup that I think traditionally a lot of romance readers have seen. And the reason for that was, I was like, well, there can't be that, because the whole point of the first 2 acts was getting these 2 characters to kind of a place where they understood each other. Like one of the beautiful things about their relationship, I thought, was, they're both trans, and neither of them have kind of, found themselves in a relationship quite like this with another trans person before. Jean-Pierre has not had much, even friendships with trans people before the events of this book. So he's been very, very isolated, period. And Luna has had like a series of, romantic adventures, but that she is ultimately not, going to write home about. And the whole point of them like getting closer and closer to understanding each other and understanding where each other was coming from, especially from their different experiences as trans people, and as, you know, in at least in Jean-Pierre's case, the, you know, the experience of someone who grew up with wealth versus someone who didn't, is that like by the time we get to Act 3, they wouldn't blow up at each other. Like they wouldn't have that giant like breakdown of the relationship because like, oh, I found out a secret that you were keeping, or we disagree on something. Like the big like blow up that they have is actually like pretty fairly, like, I wouldn't say low stakes because to them it's a big deal, but it's resolved quickly in the grand scheme of things, because I was like, we need to get to the fucking I was sounding so academic and smart for a little second there. Well, like we gotta get to it. We gotta fit in all the fucking that needs to happen for this like absolutely pathetic like disaster of a guy who just like is going to like explode otherwise. So yeah. I knew that I didn't want there to be like a huge ton of angst and trauma. Like there's a little, but it's like, yeah, resolved quickly, or like not in a way that makes, I think, the characters feel imperiled or like they're in danger. Because like, you know, I think we can talk about your book as well in this context. We get so much of that already. Like we get so much danger and peril for queer characters. And it's just nice to have, you know, to see them having like just a nice day once in a while.
Yes. Also because like they have like there are things that there are like negative experiences that they both have over the course of the book, right? Like they both experience like transphobic microaggressions and like macroaggressions, you know, like, and those aren't problems that the book is going to solve, right? Like those are problems that are just like world like, you know, and so to have the actual plot of the book be something that is like lower angst, comforting. They've, you know, like they've the whole like I always say to myself, they've been through enough, you know, like I don't, you know, like I like who am I to make their lives harder, you know?
I was like, she lost her job on page like 2, like that's enough.
Right. And she's so like Luna has like coping strategies that I can only dream of. Okay. Like she has her little journal that she writes things in. She has a mantra that she says. She has a yoga practice. Okay. Like she has a supportive mom and a support network. Okay. Like she has all of the infrastructure. And so like watching her like work through the bullshit that happens to her is like, it is like, again, she's never done anything wrong. She's a perfect person. Okay.
Well, I mean, not to argue with her because I, you know, obviously I love her too. She does have a tendency to sometimes tip towards toxic positivity.
Yeah.
Like, which we can obviously forgive. But yeah, she does kind of have her shit is together in that way. Like, yeah, she may not have any money or savings. She may really need health insurance once she loses her job. But like she has like all of these friends and family that she can rely on in a way that Jean-Pierre doesn't. So, you know, not to make it like a poor little rich boy thing, but there is, I think, some of that like naturally coming through is this idea where like, you know, she has a lot of things that he can't buy, you know, like there were a lot of things that he realized through, you know, falling in love with her and spending time with her, that there were parts of life that he was missing out on that he hadn't ever been able to access, because even money cannot give you access to those things.
It's also like it's interesting to see her grow in the direction of like accommodating his, I don't want to call it negativity, right? But like if he's going to see the world a certain way, including like if he's going to, at during the times when it seems like he's really going to pursue a relationship with his horrendous family of origin, okay, she kind of is like, okay, like, you know, like she's not going to fight him on that, you know, like, and that I think takes tremendous, like, you have to bite your tongue, you know.
Yeah, Luna's definitely been to therapy for a very long time, and she just definitely knows how to pick her battles.
Mm-hmm.
There are some things like, you know, when you have a really good friend who starts dating someone that like you don't think is a good idea, like, you know, though, that if you try and say something about it, they're not going to take it well. It's the same way with, like, you know, these relationships with, you know, with someone's bio family, like, you can try and show them, like, you know, all the pros and cons and lay it out for them in black and white of like why this may not be worth your time, but like it doesn't matter because at heart he's like really just wants to be loved, and like you can't argue you know, him out of that, especially not him. You're just never going to get him to. He, you know, people have to come to things, come to Jesus in their own time.
What was your favorite part of the book to write?
I've been giving this answer often because it's true. My favorite part to write was the scene where they have to go to the grocery store together. I think it's early on in the book. They're still kind of getting to know each other a little bit. And I think that if you want to know somebody, like, deep down who they are in their soul, like, take them to a grocery store and be like, we have to get things on this list, and just see what happens. Because you will immediately know everything you need to know about that person and their personality and where they're coming from. Luna just immediately is like, we need to pick up cheese. And he's like, that's not on the list.
The first time I went grocery shopping, this is like, I remember the first time I went grocery shopping with my husband, okay? And I watched him put the groceries in the basket in an organized way, which is something that in my previous decades of life, it had never once occurred to me to do. And I still don't do that. But they're like, the cold items were together, and like the vegetables. I know. Thank you for that. Okay. The vegetables were together. And like, you know, like the hard items, like cans or whatever, that were together. That way they don't smash into other stuff. Okay. And that way, when it gets taken out to be bagged, it's all, and then you can, like, all of your cold stuff is in one bag, and you can just stick, if you're lazy, the whole thing goes in the fridge.
This is too powerful.
I know. Right? I honestly didn't have a choice but to, like, settle down and have several children with this.
I have no choice.
These are all skills. Like, I'm looking at the door as if he's going to come in and be like, really? Okay. But
take credit.
but I like these I am very much a, like, I have to go around the grocery, like, 4 times around the perimeter of the grocery store to even get like 2/3 of what's on my list. Okay. You know, and so needless to say, like, in the delegation of duties, I haven't been to a grocery store in like 3 years.
Listen, some people in the couple have strengths in other areas.
That's right.
One of my fondest memories from college, actually, I was roommates with some very dear friends of mine, and one of them asked me if I would teach her how to grocery shop because she had never done it before on her own. And we went to a grocery store, and I was like, you need a list. You need to aisle by aisle. You need to look at the brands, okay? You need to get the store brand, unless it's like you really feel strongly about it. And then, like, we're in the produce section, so we're almost to the end, and I see her, like, going to grab some, like, out-of-season strawberries that are, like, 3 times more expensive than they, you know, are when they're in season. I was like, those aren't on the list. They're not on the list. She was like, I want them.
Guys, the whole time that was happening, I was like, oh, I really empathize with Cat. And then my coworker from this bookstore texted me and was like, wow, I really empathize with Cat's husband right now.
Tag yourself. Are you Cat or Cat's husband?
True. We also have a comment that says 100% agree that grocery planning / cart division is sexy. So you hit the nail on the head here.
I didn't even know that
later
was
on.
possible. I love it.
I have a few audience questions that I want to get to while we have some time. And then we'll do like a few Novel Neighbor rapid fire ones, which are always fun.
Okay.
The first one is for TJ, and then we have a few for both. TJ, we have a question from Ryan who asks, will you be doing an interview / cook / bake something for us at some time again, like the ambrosia cheesecake you did last time?
So that's a reference to my first book's launch event, which was a virtual launch where the very, very kind Anita Kelly was hosting. And as they were interviewing me, I was in my friend's palatial kitchen baking a cheesecake, which was my idea. And the worst idea of all time, because like I'm not paying any attention to what I should be, like I'm not listening to the conversation. I'm like, I'm sorry, I have to seed this lemon really quick.
I like that you're like, first book launch, let's make it harder.
Yeah, let's just like do an obstacle course on top of all of the stress of a book launch was my plan. So do I want to do it again, Ryan? Like, I feel like if it were a live event somehow where I had like, people in front of me and we could be talking and I could like be making little things, that's the kind of like dinner party I love to do. If like everyone crowds into the kitchen but doesn't get in my way and I just like put little things together and like put them out as I go so people can nosh. Like I love doing that. I would love to do a book event like that for sure.
Oh, that's so fun. Now I'm needling on that. A question for both of you. Is there heavy influence from certain people in your personal life found in aspects of the characters in either of your current books?
Kat, do you want to go first?
Oh man. Okay, so usually I say no, that I just like don't know anybody. Like it is very difficult for me to like imagine any person I know as a character in any kind of book at all, But like the character in the book that's coming out next week, like he's from a big Italian American family, and like there was not individual characters, but there's a lot. I mean, like pretty much his entire experience as a member of a large Italian family is just like basically stuff that happened to me, So, which is weird too. Like I could just call my dad and like be like, what kind of, like what did so-and-so uncles drink? And I would be like,
Yeah. That's so fun.
I love that. For me, I guess, like, I don't know, a lot of people who know us think that my wife, that Luna must be based on my wife because they're both really tall, I guess. And they both really like cheese. But like after that, like the similarities like completely end. Like, my wife doesn't do yoga. She doesn't believe in astrology. All the stuff that like were major parts of Luna's personality. I was just like, no, that's not her. That's just like coming from my head. But yeah, our friends were like, well, no, they're both tall. But yeah, I think pieces of people I know make it into characters. Like I definitely, some of my most close friends and loved ones vape. And I just thought like that's something I can steal wholesale and just add to this little guy. So yeah, bits and pieces.
I have loved ones who vape.
So broad-minded, TJ.
Thank you. I just think that love is love. You have to be tolerant.
This one's fun. When you guys have writer's block, is there any music on your playlist that helps?
For me, it depends on the book. Like I am like often like I'll find a song or a couple of songs that have the right vibes. Okay. But I don't think it actually helps me with writer's block. It's just sort of like what I'm listening to like that's just while I'm being alive and having writer's block, I'm listening to music. It's not really a solution,
Yeah, same. I'm working on something right now, book 4. And this is, it's kind of a busy week. So I've been like not as focused on it as I would like to be. And for whatever reason, I decided like this project is a Phil Collins joint, I'm just like blasting early Genesis and like that percussive kind of 80s vibe, even though this book does not take place in the 80s and no one is a drummer or is British. Like, I don't know why though. I was just like, Phil Collins is going to get me through this one, and it has not worked so far. But it's nice to have a soundtrack for when you're stuck on the subway and you're angry about your writer's block.
Favorite thing is when authors put together playlists for their books. I was looking for one for Chef's Choice, so if you decide to do that,
I have one. It's on my website if you'd like to check it out. Yeah, it's a Spotify playlist. It's at tjalexander.com.
Amazing. Everybody hear that? All right. Question: what are both of you reading right now?
I am reading Emily Tesch's new book, Some Desperate Glory. Okay. And it is, okay. So like the first 10% of this book was like the most stressful reading experience. I was going to like throw this book in the ditch. Like I was so stressed out by it. It has like all of the things that stress me out like in one book. Okay. Then I realized that like, I was like, okay, like the reviews are really good. People who I trust liked this book. Okay. I'm going to like push through to like 20%. And I am obsessed with it now. It's like, it's like billed as a space opera. It is like straight up sci-fi. Okay. Like this is sci-fi in an affectionate sense. And I love it. I'm about halfway through and I'm going to make real bad choices tonight in order to finish it.
We read it for Science Fiction Fantasy Book Club recently. And everybody said that first 10% is like.
Oh, and it's so different from like her other books were like
cozy.
Cozy magic in the woods, like fairy men. Like it was like very, very like just lovely. And this is not lovely. It's like the worst person in the universe.
Yeah.
And also there's like genocide in the background. Like it's not good.
Emily was like, let me show you my range.
Seriously, but like highly, highly recommend if you can push through stress.
I'm trying to picture like what your blurb for this would look like on the back cover. Like, was gonna throw it in a ditch. Highly recommend. Well, I finished an advanced copy of Cats, We Could Be So Good a couple weeks ago. And it took over my brain. And it's all I wanted to talk about to anyone, which made me so mad because it's not out yet. So please, everyone read it and then talk to me about it. But it's also very difficult when you read a book that you really, really, really loved. And then like, how can anything that comes after this? Like,
no, it's awful.
It's the worst feeling of knowing that like, I'm going to pick up this other book and I'm not going to give it a fair shake.
No,
I'm just not.
No.
But I am currently reading. I just started a few chapters in, and I'm loving it. It's not a romance. It's called Summer Suns by Lee Delio. It's kind of I think it's a new adult, young adult, and it's a horror story. And I'm just, I needed that kind of 180, I think, because Cat's book is definitely not a horror story.
Well, that's like the only cure, like to the thing where like you read a book and you love it, and then like all books, you're like allergic to all books. Then like you have to read like a biography. You know what I mean? Like it has to be something that's just
completely different.
Yeah, a self-help book, like something that's just like not even anywhere in the same ballpark.
Yeah, a collection of archival receipts from grocery stores. That would be really interesting to me personally. If anyone knows of anything like that, send it my way.
We have a question for either of you in your most recent books. Did you go down any research rabbit holes that were particularly fun?
Ooh, I mean, I had to research quite a few things.
French, for one.
Yeah, how to cook for one, how to cook a real meal, a real fancy meal that wasn't just like pasta and cheese. So yeah, like, but in addition to the recipes, I don't think it's a spoiler. The characters leave New York at one point and go to Paris. I haven't been to Paris since I was a very small child. And so I was on Google Maps looking around, being like, where would he live? What would he do? Where are we going? And that was very fun because I could kind of pretend that I was going on a vacation, my little Parisian getaway with them. Yeah, I did fall down a huge rabbit hole and like picked out my, French condo, like where I would live, obviously, if I was a millionaire. That's that's what I did.
I love that.
I hadn't like most of my books, like there just isn't as abundant like research primary sources as there was for this one, right? Like it's a book that takes place in a newspaper, and like you can get the newspapers from 1959, right? Like you can see what the news is. And so like I found myself just like reading the 1959 newspapers, okay, like which is not legitimate research for a romance novel. Okay? Nobody cares about Khrushchev. Like, Khrushchev has fallen off the radar.
Nothing says sexy love story like mystery.
There were like 5 references to Khrushchev and like 27 to Robert Moses when I was drafting this book, because like that's what was in the news. And also I really like urban planning, and I had to tone it down because I was like, that's just like way too like inside. Like there's like the 20 people who like urban planning are going to be really into it. They're going to buy the next book. Everyone else is going to be like, what's wrong with Cat?
Okay, can I tell you, I'm one of those 20 people. and when this book of Cats goes off on its fuck Robert Moses tangents, I'm just like, I could read this for another 1,000 pages. Like,
oh my God.
Say it.
I'm so excited for everybody to get to experience this book with only this information.
Someone who's really into like the history of like highway construction is gonna be like, oh, I'm so excited to read this. I think it's about
I toned it down so much. Like nobody needs to know that much about the BQE.
I did.
All right. At the end of our author interviews, I couldn't remember what these are called, events, we always do some this or that's. So I'll ask you like rapid fire, and you can choose what you would rather. All right. So number 1, cooking or baking?
Oh, baking.
Cooking.
Amazing. Number 2.
Baking, sorry, I want to explain my reason. I know this is rapid fire and it's not happening rapidly. Baking, you have to like be in the moment and be concentrating on something. And in cooking, you can just kind of like loosey-goosey. Yeah.
Historical or contemporary?
Ooh, like I read so much contemporary. Like I almost feel like disloyal, Like,
I'll say it, historical. I say historical.
They're on record.
Yeah.
All right. Enemies to lovers or friends to lovers?
Oh, friends to lovers. But no, see, I can't rapid fire this one either, okay? Because the thing is, like, I love reading enemies to lovers. Like, I love it. Like, when it's done well, when it's really done well. Like, they have, like, knives, okay? And then they have to figure out how to respect one another. Love it, okay? But when it's done, like, I really, like, rebuke it, okay? But, like, friends to lovers, I like even when it's done terribly. Just awful.
What was that one viral tweet about enemies to lovers that it was like, when the one guy shows up on the other one's doorstep bleeding and is like, I didn't know where else to go. Like, that's the good enemies to lovers trope.
Yeah.
But you don't know anyone else.
These are supposed to be rapid fire, but now I have a tangential question. Are there tropes that you prefer to write versus read? Like, are there tropes that you don't want to write?
I mean, I could never write an enemies or legitimate enemies to lovers. Like I've tried, and like they get rid of the enemy to lover thing like on page 20. Like it's like I just don't have the stamina to like keep up that level of animosity for the duration of a book, of like even a third of a book, you know.
Yeah.
But I love reading it. I think that might be why I love reading it, is because it's just so, it doesn't feel like it has any relevance to what I'm writing. Like it's pure leisure.
Yeah.
For me, it's age gap. I like reading it. I don't think I could write it, just because I would sound like I'm not cool. I don't know what young people like.
I sound like I'm not cool. Did you choose enemies or friends?
Oh, no, I was just sitting on the fence and letting people hopefully not notice. Friends to lovers. I just like that better. I just like it better.
That's so sweet. Forbidden love or fake dating?
Fake dating.
I mean, isn't it the same?
As
I mean, fake dating can be like forbidden-ish. There's like
Romeo and Juliet, that classic fake dating play.
Okay, you've got me there.
See, I say fake dating, and I only complained about the trope like half an hour ago. And also I'm reading, like, the fanfic I'm reading right now is like heavily forbidden love. So like I'm just a hypocrite. Like I no internal consistency at all. Sorry.
You can like more than one thing.
Living a lie.
I'm gonna stop arguing for the idea that apples are oranges. Sometimes apples are also oranges. Yeah, I think fake dating.
All right, last one. New York or Paris?
So you live in New York, so it's like, how do you?
New York,
right?
Sorry.
I am an ex-New Yorker, so like, and so like I have like full like New York, like I'm like, do I want to live in New York at this point? Like, no, I have a minivan. Okay. Like I don't want to live in any major city. I don't leave my house. Okay. Like it doesn't matter where I live. But I do have a lot of nostalgia about a New York that definitely stopped existing 20 years ago. So like, I couldn't even live in New York now without every moment being like, that used to be an empty lot filled with syringes. Okay. And I would be like that old lady,
Oh, I am that old lady, gender neutral. I was walking around downtown last night after my event, and I've lived in New York for so long at this point that like things have, gone through a cycle or two of gentrification as I've been here. And walking past places is like, I remember when that used to be a bar I got kicked out of. I remember when that used to be a bar I got kicked out of. Now none of these places are bars I've been kicked out of. I miss the good old days when you could go to a bar and get kicked out.
Kat, you mentioned your minivan, and I pictured you rolling up to the Eiffel Tower in it. Because at that point, I thought you were going to pick Paris.
Oh my God, I'm sure you imagine my minivan would, I think that there'd be like a diplomatic incident, like if my Honda Odyssey arrived in Paris.
What if instead of like honking the horn was actually like a honk honk honk? Every Parisian would be like super offended.
Guys, this has been a delight. I don't know how it's already been an hour, but alas, it has.
I do.
If you have not yet read Chef's Choice, it is out now. And if you order it from us, we will also send you a book plate, and we'll send you a recipe and the cutest little art character card. And also, Kat's book, We Could Be So Good, hit shelves in about a week, right?
Yep, a week.
Amazing. Guys, thank you so much for coming on
Thank
this
you.
with us.
Well, thank you for having us.
Of course. Thank you, everybody who tuned in, and we'll see you for the next one.